What's going on, HSM? I'm so glad that you're here with us tonight as we close down a series that we've been calling He Is. If you've been here the last couple of weeks, or even if you haven't, just a quick recap of where we've been. In this series, He Is, we've been talking about the attributes of God. And what I mean by an attribute of God is this is something that God communicates to us about Himself through His Word. These are things that God wants us to know about who He is. And we've been hashing those out over the past several weeks. In week 1, we talked about how God is holy. In week 2, we talked about how God is just. And then in week 3, we talked about how God is on our side. And this week, we'll be closing down our series. But what I want to do as we get started is take you through a little bit of a thought exercise just to get us rolling here. And if you are watching with someone right now and you're at a campus, what I want you to do, I'm going to throw out some questions at you, and I want you to discuss this with people that are close to you. If you're watching alone, I just want you to be thinking about what your answers would be for yourself. But as we get started, what I want you to think about is what are some of your pet peeves. And what I mean by pet peeves, how I would define that is a pet peeve is something that's really small that you just get disproportionately angry about. So I'm thinking about pet peeves. Again, if you are on a campus and you're with people close to you, I'm going to have you talk with people as we go through this. If you're watching this alone, I just want you to be thinking through your answers on your own. But for me, just a couple of pet peeves. You'll find that most of my pet peeves happen when I am behind the wheel of a vehicle. And one of the things that I cannot stand is when people do not use their turn signals. Without fail, it always seems like I'm behind some really old guy who's turning left and there's all the traffic coming this way, and all of a sudden he just slows down to like 2 miles an hour for the last quarter mile before he's going to take that turn, and it drives me crazy. A pet peeve of mine is when people don't use their turn signals. Just a couple more. I hate the sound of nails on a chalkboard, like that annoying screeching sound that comes on a chalkboard. And I don't know if there are still chalkboards in the schools that y'all are in, or whether they're whiteboards, smartboards, or otherwise, but it seemed without fail, whenever I had a class that had a chalkboard in it, there was always that one goober that knew that it would get to people and would walk up to the board and just start scratching it just to make people mad. I can't stand that. It drives me crazy. I can't do it. And then a last one, and this is a weird one, but I just got to be honest with you. It's a pet peeve of mine when someone's shirt tag is hanging out, and I want so bad just to like walk over and tell them, hey, like your shirt tag's out. But it's weird. It's weird when you have that conversation, so I got to not do it, and I just see it, and I got to ignore it. That's one of my pet peeves. So again, if you're on a campus, hopefully you shared a couple of yours with people around you, and if you're alone, just want you thinking of those to yourself. The next level that we're going to move to, I'm going to describe it as a burden, and a burden is one of those things that you kind of need to carry day in and day out that just weighs on you over time. So again, if you're around people, chat it up with them. If not, think in your head. Here's a couple examples of what a burden could be. I have a buddy who has consistent back pain, and it's the kind of thing that he definitely feels it every day. It's definitely kind of a slow drain on his life, but occasionally it'll just intensify, and it'll almost be kind of a debilitating thing for him. And that back pain is just kind of always on the backdrop of his life. It's a consistent burden that just weighs down on him. And other really common ones would be like financial. So let's say you buy a car and you didn't think about all of the gas money that you're going to need and all the insurance money that you're going to need and all the upkeep for taking care of that vehicle and fixing it. And all of a sudden you don't have enough money to maintain this thing that you thought was going to give you all of this freedom. And that could be a financial burden. There's lots of different burdens, physical ones, relational ones, financial ones, but we all deal with burdens. Again, hopefully you got to share just one or two with people that are close to you, or that you're thinking about what those are for yourself. And then the last category, just to take it up even further, is something that I'll just describe as a disaster. And it's just those things, they don't happen real often, but we all experience them at some point, where something will happen and it'll be a terrible thing and it'll completely change our lives moving forward. That can mean a whole lot of things. You'll hear about natural disasters that happen all over the world, and those things can take life and destroy houses and change communities. These terrible things that can happen that we need to deal with. Or maybe there's someone that you love or care about that got some kind of diagnosis that's going to change their future and your relationship with them. And those things are hard. They're disastrous. They weigh down on you. or maybe you know someone that was in a car accident or some other kind of accident where it wasn't something where it was just kind of like a fender bender and we move on, but it was the kind of thing where people sustain serious injuries that are going to change the trajectory of their life. And the reality is we just talked about a couple of different levels of things that just kind of suck that we need to deal with, things that are really difficult. And if you're hearing this right now, chances are you're in high school, you're probably somewhere like 14 to 18 years old, something like that. You've only lived about 15 to 20% of your life. And you already know all of these things that we've been talking about. You've either experienced them personally or you know someone else that's experienced those things. And man, if you've experienced or even know of all of those different kind of heartaches, the hard things that we need to deal about in life, just thinking about like the last 80% of your life, just how much more will that hold? What else is going to come up? What other burden, what other disaster, what other heartache is in store? And the reality is like we start to frame this, we start to describe it, but this isn't new to you guys. You know that life is hard. There's all kinds of bad things that can happen, and that they can be from small things all the way to disastrous things that completely change the trajectory of our life. You guys are used to that. It's just kind of something that we deal with. But it's interesting because with those experiences that we have, oftentimes they can fly in the face of what we know God to be. We'll have these series and all of a sudden we start discussing who God is and how he's just and how he's holy and how he's on our side. And we start to experience some of these things in life. And it's like, how can God be the powerful God that we know him to be? How can he be on my side when all of these things are happening? And these things seem to kind of lock up and be in consistent tension. And man, that's one of the biggest questions I think that you can ask. How can God be this, but my personal experience be this? And what I want to do is we're going to jump into John chapter 16, verse 33, because Jesus speaks to this tension that we feel directly, and I think he handles it a lot differently than we would assume. So again, that's John chapter 16, is verse 33. We'll jump in here. I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. And when we start to look at the context of the passage, we see that Jesus is having a heart-to-heart with his disciples, and what he's trying to do is prepare them for the future, and he makes two very definitive statements. On one hand, he says, hey, you will have many trials and sorrows, and I want to start there. Jesus did not guarantee an easy life. He didn't say, hey, if you follow me, it's all going to be rainbows and unicorns, and everything's going to be totally fine. That is not the reality at all. In fact, Jesus' promise is quite the opposite. And he says, hey, not only maybe will you have trials and sorrows, but you will have trials and sorrows. And then let's take it just one more level and say, hey, you will have many trials and sorrows. Life is going to be difficult. There's going to be all kinds of things that you need to navigate, all kinds of things that you need to figure out, and it's going to be hard. And then while that's on this end, and this will be the personal experience, here is the truth. Jesus says, take heart, for I have overcome the world. He's saying, hey, I know all of that stuff is going to be in your experience, but remember that this is still true about me, that I have overcome the world. And if we're going to put it in a different way, we would say this, that God is victorious, that God is victorious, that there is nothing that you can experience that comes outside of God's control, that he has overcome the world. There's nothing that surprises him, and there's nothing that slips out of his control. So as we experience this tension in our lives, this is who God is, this is who my personal experience is. Jesus called this out hundreds and hundreds of years ago and said, hey, this is exactly what it's going to be like. And what I want to do is hopefully just give us a little bit of a different perspective so that we can start to see things the way that Jesus does when he can say, hey, this will be your personal experience, but then this is who I am. So what I'm going to challenge you to do right now is try and see things from God's perspective. And what we need to do in order to do that is start to really branch out and scope out our view and look past all of those things that we listed earlier on, of those burdens and the tragedies, and start to see them from a broader perspective. When we start to kind of look out at the grander narrative of what humanity is and this reality that God is weaving with time, it's so easy to go right to Genesis 1:1, and Genesis 1:1 goes like this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so often we think that things started right at that point, But the reality is they didn't start right at that point. There was stuff that happened before that, and it's reflected in John 1:1, and it's this: in the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. So when we go to Genesis 1:1, that's the start of human history as we know it. But it's so important for you to realize that God is eternal, and that his existence lasted well beyond what we know as human existence. And if I was going to illustrate that, it would just be a line. And if you were here with me, we would imagine this to go all the way as far as it can in that direction, all the way as far as it can in that direction. What I mean by eternity is that time always was, and it always will be, and God always was, and God always will be. So we have this God who's eternal. He was the uncaused cause. He was pure before anything else, and ultimately caused everything else to be into being. And then we see Genesis 1:1 with, again, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and y'all know the rest of the story. He created everything. And if I was going to illustrate that, it would just be this small little tape part right here, this blue little tape part right in the middle. So we have all of time from eternity past, all of time into eternity present. And we have this little slice of time right in the middle where humanity lives on earth, and it's human history really as we know it. And the interesting thing is, comparatively, human history really doesn't make up a whole lot of time when we think of time always having been and time always moving forward too. But then we kind of start to think about it further, and we start to consider how God even describes our own lives within just this little slice of human history. And in James chapter 4, verse 14, it reads like this: "Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes." And we see the rope is all of history, and it's God is eternal, and he's always been and he always will be. We have the blue, which is human history. And if we were just going to illustrate your life, man, it would just be just a little dot, just a tiny little dot somewhere here within human history. And the reality is, I'm trying to illustrate this for you, what our life is like when it comes to thinking about eternity, but even this doesn't really do it justice. The reality is, this dot in scale to this rope doesn't even touch what our lives would be in terms of eternity. And what I want to start to iterate is, we were created for a relationship with God. And you guys know, we've talked about this, that we were created for a relationship with God, and sin got in the way of that. And Jesus came down to earth and paid the penalty for our sins so that we can be reunited with him. And as Christians, we believe that your life starts at this dot, but that it'll continue for all of eternity in the future. And what your life looks like in the future for all of eternity depends on that one decision that you make, whether to trust Jesus with your life and to accept the forgiveness that he extends for sin. And what I would suggest to you, and there are so many ways to answer this question, but what I would suggest to you is that a lot of the bad things that happen in our lives, a lot of the tough things that happen in our lives are things that God allowed to happen so that he underlines our need for him. So when we're in the midst of all of our junk, and we're living this dot of a life that we have, this mist of a life that we have, and we're trying to figure it out, and we're frustrated, and it seems dark, and we don't know exactly what to do, it's hopefully those things that point us to the hope that Jesus gives us, and to the relationship that Jesus can give us. And it's so important when we're in that place that we know that God's victory has the final word. And when we say that Jesus came down and died for our sins so that we can be reunited with him, that's hope not just in our circumstances right now, but it's hope for all of eternity moving forward. And the reality is that God's victory has the final word in anything that you're going through right now. And I don't know whether the burdens that are in your life, or the tragedies that are in your life, or a family member with a diagnosis, or someone that you care about that was in an accident, or I don't know what your heartache is, but what you need to hear tonight is that God's victory has the final word on every single one of those things. And if we choose to follow him and we choose to accept the forgiveness that he extends to us, that his victory not only has the final word in our lives, but his victory is going to ring out forever in eternity future, and we'll get to be a part of that too. So whether you're listening on a campus, or whether you're listening at home, I don't know what you're dealing with, but I do know what the number one most important question that you can grapple with when it comes to God and when it comes to God's character is this: will you follow him? Will you accept the hope that he extends in your circumstances right now? And will you accept the hope that he extends for all of eternity future so we can spend forever with him? So thanks so much for being here tonight. Thank you for being in this series that we're calling He Is, and we look forward to seeing you another time. Have a great night.